Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Matt. I'm in Japan right now, but today we're going to be talking about China. China. So, something that's been everywhere in the news, especially in China recently, has been the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, him saying something unfortunate, I would say, in these times, especially with these tariffs. Let's roll that clip.
We borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. That is not a recipe for economic prosperity. It's not a recipe for low prices, and it's not a recipe for good jobs in the United States of America.
Okay, so as you can see, he called the Chinese people peasants. He said Chinese peasants. Now, this has triggered a social media storm in China. People are mad, people are angry, and I think that I would like to give my opinion on this and the tariffs just a little bit and just kind of present the facts that I know about it and how I think it's going to play out. I'm no expert. I actually think that I probably should not be making this video, but I'm going to do it anyways because isn't that what social media is about? It's about making mistakes and being canceled, right? So I think that in English, the word farmer doesn't necessarily work as well as the word peasant for who he's describing. Because I think he's trying to say the lower class, like not that they're low class, but that they're the lower class of China, the peasants, right? In China, the farmers. In Chinese, we call them 农民, which means like agriculture people. But there's not really a word for that in English other than farmers, but not all farmers work in factories, nor any of them do. Do peasants work in factories? I don't know. I feel like he could have said factory workers, but he chose the word peasants. So I think that it's just an unfortunate time in this relations with China right now because, you know, these tariffs are going crazy. I mean, I think right now America is at 125% against China, and China's matching it going back. But then I saw that, you know, the iPhones and electronics and chips and things like that. And then I saw that like iPhones and chips and computers are not going to be affected. So I'm not really sure what that means or how it looks or what's going to be tariffed. I mean, I really don't purchase that much stuff. I usually shop at thrift. So, you know, if you're worried about this kind of stuff, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it'll be over soon. But I asked a couple of opinions of people that I respect. And a lot of people just said that it's a long play for the stable economy in the States. And I think that's something we need to just remember, right? Something we need to remember about the way the world works is every country is about its own economy, right? Every country wants its own success. Every country wants its own stability. It wants its best for the people. And so if that's the case, well, I mean, that makes sense as to why there would be these wars going on, you know? It's not just tit for tat. It's not just I'm mad at you, I should whatever. I think it really is something that is what Trump hopes is good for the country. Now, I'm not saying that it's the right decision. I don't know. I am not a political science major. I literally just studied Chinese. And so, yeah, but my heart goes out to the Chinese people. And so if you're watching this and you're from China, you know, I can't say sorry for the president, but I can say that I'm really, you know, maybe I'll just say it in Chinese. 我们美国副总统说的就是说你们是 peasants， 我觉得真的是非常不礼貌，然后真的会让人觉得很怎么说，就是不舒服。然后我想就是表示，就是我也觉得很遗憾，就是这么重要的人在世界的大台说了这句话，我觉得真的是很就是很不对。对，因为你们并不是这样的人，你们是人，你们有价值的。然后，对，就是希望这个视频，你如果觉得说你自己是不是一个就是被欺负还是怎么样，就是我求你，就是真的不要理这句话，真的不要就是想太多。 因为别人不能代表你自己对自己的看法，只有你可以代表自己，说自己是怎么样的一个人。我觉得我们要通过我们的行为，还有我们的话语去证明说我们到底是什么样的一个人。对。So yeah, I mean, I just think that it's unfortunate that Trump's vice president. Yeah, so just yeah, so I just think it's really unfortunate that this happened during these times. I think that people should watch the entire clip. I think that people should understand that he's not calling, I don't think he's calling Chinese people peasants as in everyone's a peasant. I think that he's just mentioning a class of people, but the tensions are high, so this is going to hurt people's feelings, And that's what I think is the dumbest thing about this whole thing, is that, of course, people are going to feel something because right now tensions are high anyways. So it wasn't very wise, it wasn't very smart, and I think it just causes division. And that's not what we need, Living in China for over 15 years, it'll be 16 years in July this year that I moved to China. And that being said, I really do feel very connected to China and the Chinese people. And, that fact that people are upset about this, it makes me sad. And I just hope that, everyone sees that a government, a leader, someone that you think is important or whoever, they can't define who you are, That's not what defines us, It's about what we are and who we are on the inside, who you truly are and how you treat others. I think that's truly what people can respect. And, I'm a firm believer of what you say and how your actions are comes from your inner heart. And I think that being on a stage, being a government official of any country, a president, a prime minister, an emperor, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to say things that you didn't mean, and you're never going to apologize for them. And I think that's just the bad taste of politics, And I hate that. But that's just the world that we live in. So, yeah, that's kind of my take on that. And with the tariffs, I think that this is going to be a long battle because I think Trump wants China to give in, and they want them to really get a taste for how, they've been doing something bad, or, they've been taking advantage of American taxes for a very long time. I'm not sure. Something that I'm curious about, if anybody knows about this, is, if you want to buy an American car in China or a foreign car, for instance, it's like, extremely expensive. I mean, I've had friends who, bought like a $150,000 BMW in China. And then when we're in the States, they're like, oh, this one's only 80. That's so much cheaper. It's like half price, and to them that's cheap. And to an average American, that's crazy. But people that have money in China have a lot of money. And I think that's that's something that people don't understand about Chinese people, is that the most of people in China, they save their money all the time. They don't spend it like we do in the States. They're not living paycheck to paycheck. They're living off of generational wealth. They're living off of, cutting corners and really, not cutting corners, what's the right word? They're living off of savings that they've saved for a very long time, and they're sending money back to their families, because their families do have people that work in those factories, right? Those really poor people are the mothers and fathers of the generation that is now super successful and, for instance, invented the chip that's in this camera that I'm using right now. For instance, my camera is a Panasonic, but it was made in China, so this was made by a peasant, right? But it wasn't made by a peasant. It was made by a person who has value. And I think that is what's important here. I think, politics are complicated and there's going to be feelings involved, but it's never going to be perfect. And that's just kind of how life is. And I think you just kind of have to stand in the middle and just realize that the government doesn't work for you. It doesn't really care about what you think about. It cares about so many more people than individuals. It cares about every single individual added together. which is the people. It's not one person. So I think that's where, we've got to remember this is kind of what we're up against when we're thinking about policies or politics or tariffs. Like, is it for the greater good? What is the greater good? You have to discover that yourself. What is goodness? What is bad? What do you think about that? All these things are subjective. Or are they? Is there a definite? I believe in a definite. I believe in a creator, but if you don't, then you have to figure out what that looks like for you. Okay, so one more point before I go, I thought that would be interesting to talk about is, besides this sunset being awesome. Wait, can you guys even see it? I don't think you can. Okay, so one more point that I thought that I would talk about real fast is, because there are a lot of Western people now on the Chinese app, Xiaohongshu. I think it's called, you guys call it Red Note or Red Book? I'm not sure, whatever it's called. There can be conversations with Chinese people about how they feel about America now, which is kind of the first time this is really happening in real time in news. So I think this tariff thing and the whole Chinese peasants comment, it's going to hit differently. And I think that a lot of Chinese people are going to have their hearts heard by a lot of Americans. And I think that's going to be interesting for how this plays out in the voting in the future. Because if a certain group of people are listening to the opposite side of the world, right? And I don't know why I did air quotes. It is the opposite side of the world. If they're listening to the opposite side of the world, if a group of people are listening to the opposite side of the world who, we're being told that, politically wise, government wise, and all these things are happening, that it's opposite of what we believe as Americans, then I think that it's going to be really interesting for the future. So I have no idea what's going to happen, but I just feel grateful that I get to live in China and stay there. It's not been easy to figure that out, but I'm glad that I figured it out, and I'm glad that I speak Chinese, because heck no, I ain't doing that again. But I thought, speaking of Chinese, I'm gonna make some lessons for people on, if you want to learn Chinese, here's how you can learn, and give you guys some tips and do some lessons. So yeah, that'll be in my next few videos. And I'm also gonna be, like I'm in Japan right now, I'm gonna be going around Japan and filming some stuff. Yeah, so I hope you guys stick around, and thank you for watching. See you guys later.